Good morning. Good Wednesday morning, everyone. And I'm back in my office today. Not in the garden, not in a parking lot, but in the office. And so far this morning, it's been very cool. It's not scorchingly hot in Sacramento. It'll only get up to 90 something today. But you're not here for a weather report. Yesterday, one of my Facebook friends left a little comment on yesterday's show saying something like, when are you going to talk about Goetia? Well, obviously, that person is relatively new to our morning shows because just ask Constance. She thinks I talk about Goetia all the time. But it's probably been a while. So I thought, well, I like to give you what you want. And because I have so much to give, I'll just reach into my bottomless pit of my bottomless pit of bullshit and throw it out there, and hopefully it'll serve as fertilizer for your blossoming garden of occultism. How's that for? How's that for an analogy? Okay. But anyway, yes. Okay. I've practiced Goetia since, and I call it Goetia. Call it anything you freaking want. Okay. I started calling it Goetia, and then people thought that because I pronounced it that way, that must be the correct way to pronounce it. So they started pronouncing it that way, and it's probably pronounced Goetia. Whatever it is, it's a corrupted word from the root Greek or something, meaning howling or screeching, and might have who knows what the medieval mind twisted it into meaning. But generally, what it is a relatively recognizable and lately traditional section aspect of solomonic magic. And solomonic magic is the working with blind forces in the universe, energies and powers that, when properly directed, do all the heavy lifting in the world, and when not directed or allowed to run amok in our psyche, just discharge their energy along the lines of least resistance, and many times that appears to be very destructive. I like to liken it to a bulldozer or a piece of heavy earth-moving equipment that, when operated by a skilled operator, can move mountains, can level areas in preparation of building a great temple. It can be very constructive. As a matter of fact, the atoms bind into molecules by such a force. And Goetic magic was sort of, or Solomonic magic was sort of immortalized in literature in the tales of Scheherazade and the 1001 Arabian Nights. And I guess what I'm trying to say is people, over the years, people developed Goetia. People, individual magicians, creative, spiritual creative people. And you're a people too, okay? So ultimately, any spiritual practice has its roots in people. People that are inspired, people that are illuminated, people who just accidentally stumble into a technique that seems to have a reaction. You do a certain thing, certain things happen as a result. And then they more or less explain to their own satisfaction why that happened. In the same way, you can look up at the moon during an eclipse and go, wow, a dragon is eating the moon. Well, in a metaphoric way, a dragon, fire-breathing dragon of the sun is responsible for the light that's cast into the earth and back of the still. The moon disappears during an eclipse. There's no doubt about that, okay? Same thing with Goetia. Do certain things occur. And you can explain it later, and you can attribute it to your God or your dead uncle, whatever you want. But one thing is for certain: when it comes to Goetic magic, there's been a lot written about it, and there's a lot of stuff that you can study. Not only that, but the technology and the scholarship is increasing every year, and every time there is a new wonderful scholarly work like this that just came out recently. It's absolutely wonderful. It blows out of the water the technology and the source material that we magicians have been operating on for the last 50 years, at least in my experience, and has really opened up, like my pet demon, my familiar Ouroboros. I finally found out how to spell his name in more ancient literature and everything else. And really, if you're serious about this, and you've been wondering why your lesser key of Solomon just doesn't give you enough information on the background and everything, this is a wonderful work, and I was honored to be along with the great Stephen Skinner in writing introductions to it or forewords to it, which is absolutely a scream, because I open up my thing by saying that magic is an art form, and Stephen opens up his thing and says, no, magic is not an art form, it's a science. And we both, I think if the truth was known, we both absolutely are on the same page with it. By that, I mean, by saying what we say, we're saying exactly the same thing. This is how I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not a science, but anyway, it's funny, and the editors were brilliantly juxtaposed our forewords. Be that as it may, nobody, you can discuss this till kingdom come, but unless you actually engage yourself in an act of solomonic magic, you only have an academic grasp of your interpretation of the literature that you've studied and absorbed, which is perfectly fine. Okay, but if you want to start commenting on it from any sort of position that's anything but theoretical, then you're going to have to roll up your sleeves, your magic sleeves, which are really long, and do it. Do it somehow, okay? Because you really won't know what it is until you have a personal experience to how it works. It's a lot easier. Even if the ceremony blows up in your face and there's a terrible consequences and everything else, that's how you learn it. Okay? You don't learn it by reading it. Okay? Reading it, it's fine, and it gives you sort of a script to start with, but you're going to have to write your own freaking play. That's where the magic is. And so you're going to have to it's like, I want to be a rock star. I want to get on stage and play my guitar. Okay. Well, you just don't get up on stage and play the guitar. You learn how to tune a guitar. So you got to get a guitar, and you got to tune it, and you have to get your fingers calloused, and it hurts to get your fingers calloused. It hurts for years. Okay, but you do it, okay? And but instead of just saying and discussing at the bar, you know, how to be a rock star. No, it's best if you figure out how to get a gig and then get a guitar and go out on stage and be a rock star in your mind, and have people throw stuff at you and ridicule you and boo you off the stage and give you a traumatic experience. But you've done it, and you've learned so much. It's better to do that. When people say that, well, you had your career handed to you because your father was an actor or your father was a magician. Yeah, right. No, you do it yourself. Same thing with Goetia. If you think you've got the theory of why it works or shouldn't work or anything else, fine. You don't. But fine, go ahead, put on the robe, figure out which demon you think you want to whip up, think about which a task you think you need done by a demon, cast your circle in any way that you think is by the book if you want, get in there, conjure that sucker. Whatever happens, happens. And whatever happens, say, in the next 3 months after you did it, and you're taking notes, of course, is what happens when you do that. But what's really going on is you're fine-tuning yourself. And you're burning through that intense level of fear. And you're learning what is a banishment, and you're learning what is a conjuration, and you're learning what it really was like, and what you really should have been invoking into yourself before you stepped in that stupid circle. You're learning all this stuff by just doing it. So when people say, well, I'm afraid to do Goetic evocation, good. Be afraid. Schedule it. Do it. Well, I don't know what forces I'll unleash. No, you don't know what forces you're going to unleash, and you'll never know what forces those are unless you unleash them. And that may sound foolhardy, but, you know, this kind of magic is foolhardy. Now, how I perform Goetic magic today is unrecognizably different than how I first trained myself to do it. I was by the book, and that, at the time the book was The Lesser Key of Solomon, or the Goetia. I was by the book as much as my funkiness could allow. Magician, I treated it like it was a recipe book. You do the recipe good, you're going to get the cake. And I did the names, the circles, and everything else. I talk all about it in My Life with the Spirits and Aleister Crowley's Illustrated Goetia. I talk about it in The Key to Solomon's Key. And if you've read any of those in My Life with the Spirits, you know that my early conjurations were literally a comedy of errors that ultimately were insanely successful. But I had to turn myself into somebody else in order to make them successful. And that's exactly what a Goetic evocation is going to do to you, whether you know it or not. It's that kind of magic. So, but after all of that, you know, if I would have been a by the book magician and continued to be that, when marvelous new information is revealed, my whole world would have collapsed. My whole Goetic reality would have collapsed when I discovered the true spelling of Orobos. It's not really Orobos, it's Aurus. I would have made different sigils and doodles in those days if I would have spelled it just with one less letter, you know. And but my world didn't collapse because doing the magic taught me the magic. And doing what I thought the magic was long enough till I figured out what it really was is the great work. Goetia is not low magic. Goetia is high magic. But anyway, just for fun today, yesterday when I was responding to my Facebook friend said, "Yeah, I'll do some Goetia tomorrow." I thought, well, I'm just going to have fun, and I'm going to type. I'll let Orobos sort of guide me here. So I just Googled Lon DuQuette or Lon Milo DuQuette Orobos. Okay, and I did a global Google search, And there's all sorts of stuff comes up. The books come up, and videos and interviews and things like that pop up. But there was one thing that popped up that I'd never seen before, and it was it was 8 years old. It was a posting, a discussion somewhere, 8 years old, and I just clicked on it, just the luck of the draw, and it was a letter that someone had put on some discussion page, and it had the title, "My Strange Experience While Reading the Ouroboros Chapter of My Life with the Spirits" by Lon Milo DuQuette. And I couldn't pass up the narcissist in me say, "Oh, I got to read that." And I thought, God, this would be the perfect thing to share. So as it's unsigned, my apologies to the author of this. I don't think it says anything that should embarrass him or her, so I'm going to read it to you. I've never done anything with Goetic evocation, but I've been interested and researching it for a while. As a part of this, I'm reading My Life with the Spirits, which is a very interesting book, and I highly recommend it. Of course you do. Thank you. Last night, I was reading the chapter where the author evokes Ouroboros. In the middle of this chapter are two illustrations. One is of the sigil of Ouroboros, the other a sort of grid of squares drawn out with the name Ouroboros spelled out in various directions on the grid, with the words interlocking crossword puzzle style. And hang on, let's see here. Let's see if can find that illustration quickly enough. I posted it on my Facebook page this morning. Here we go. I think that's the illustration he's talking about. There's that square, and there's Ouroboros' sigil. This is from my diary, and I doodled a couple of other things, including a self-portrait of yours truly. Okay, that's the illustration he's talking. And truly, it's just a doodle, a magic square of Ouroboros, 6 by 6 on a chimea of the sun, because there's 6 letters in the word Ouroboros. Now, if I would have known his real spelling, I would have probably put it on a chimea of Mars, or a 5-1, or done something with the square or something. But anyway, that being said, I was intrigued by the grid of letters and began examining it. At first, just trying to figure out if there was any rhyme or reason to the way the words were arranged and how they were able to spell out the name in every direction. Before long, I realized I'd been staring at the drawing for quite a while, just reading the name Ouroboros over and over again in each direction. Left, right, upwards, downwards, over and over again. I was starting to enter a trance-like state. It occurred to me that by meditating on his name in this way, I may be calling to him, which I did not want to do at this time. I quickly stopped looking at the picture and mentally cast a quick circle of protection around myself and did a sort of spur-of-the-moment banishing ritual. I spoke aloud. Speaking aloud is really important because it grounds you. It grounds you. You can mentally do all sorts of stuff, but you're up there in Yetzirah when you actually say something, when you actually get up and walk around. You're bringing it all the way down, grounding it in Asiya. But I digress. I spoke aloud and explained that I did not at this time wish the presence of any spirits. If any were here, I asked them to leave in peace, harming none as they go, and not to return to me unless I call upon them. I got to pause and say this person has wonderful magical instincts. And is quite honest and candid, too. And that while I didn't want to meet with any of them at this time, I hope to part ways in friendship, and I may call upon them in the future. I did all this just in case anything had shown up. I had no reason to believe that it had, other than the fact that I was accidentally zoning out on a summoning sigil type thing and concentrating on the spirit's name. As soon as I finished my spur-of-the-moment banishing, I felt completely different. Not different from how I felt after looking at the symbol, but different from how I felt for the last 2 or 3 years. I felt lighter, calmer, and more carefree. The strangest thing is that my eyesight was different. Colors looked more crisp and bright. This change has persisted, and I still see colors differently today. It's a very noticeable difference, and definitely not my imagination. Really, I just wanted to share this experience and see if anyone out here has any insight on it. My theory is, I love this. My theory is that I've unknowingly had some sort of energy or entity with me for the last few years, and when I did my little banishment last night, I sent it away. I'm also wondering if anyone can tell me what that letter grid with the spirit's name written on all over it is called. Well, most illustrations in the book are labeled. This one was not. Well, it was labeled as images from the author's diary. I can't find any examples of it online. Whatever this type of drawing is called, I've learned that it's a very powerful way for me to focus and enter the right state of mind if I ever do decide to try my hand at evocation. Now, that was well written and very insightful, and that person actually did an evocation. That person, and as a result of that evocation, as informal as it was, as a result of it, supposedly there was actual, even physiological changes. Now, you don't always get physiological changes, but one thing is certain. The person who entered the circle to do a Goetic evocation of any kind is a different person than the one that steps out of the circle at the end of the ceremony. Now, you can micromanage the details of whether the spirit fulfilled your charge or what it was supposed to do or not. Still, you're a different person at the end of the ceremony, at the end of the operation. And if your operation succeeds, it means that you've turned yourself into the type of person. That new you is the type of person that reward happens to. Most of us play the lottery. Most of us lose. Or most of us don't win week after week after week after week. But somebody does. And when they win, that sort of means you could look at it as, wow, now that's the type of person that a lottery win happens to. And the reason you didn't win is currently you're not the type of person that a lottery win happens to. A Goetic ceremony, if you are convinced that it's your will to change yourself into the type of person that the object of your operation happens to, then you're volunteering to the cosmos to mutate into the type of person the object of your operation happens to. And most often, we don't realize exactly what that mutation process is going to take. So that's why the most important part of a Goetic evocation is that you better be damn sure that it's your will to mutate into the type of person that the object of your operation happens to. Now, to answer Fred's question directly, if I'm going to leave you with any advice, if you feel drawn to Goetic evocation, if you've looked at the literature, if you've seen the list of spirits and what they do, and are attracted to that form of magic, and feel that you actually, in order for you to proceed with your own great work, to proceed with what you are imagining is your high magic, and you have a few little obstacles in your way that you're pretty damn convinced are standing in the way of you performing your great work, then by all means, schedule yourself a Goetic evocation. Do the preparation. Figure out what divine names you want around your circle. Figure out the names of power that you want to surround your triangle. Compose or just read the classic evocations. Do the purifications. Do the banishings. Do the evocation. I doubt very highly if a holographic image, cartoon image, is going to pixelate into your triangle and give you a visual manifestation that you see with the cones and rods of your eyes. But I'm not saying that it won't happen. If nothing seems to appear in the triangle and you've done everything, at least to your satisfaction, have a talk with the nothingness that you see in the triangle. Have that talk. Have that frank talk. Give it its directions. Give it the detailed directions. Plug up every loophole in your instructions. And then demand of the Spirit that it understands what you've just told it. And even if it's in your imagination, make sure it answers yes, and then send it on its way. And keep good notes. After you banish, after you tear down your temple, If you put all your goodies away, you'll be somebody else. And until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Fred, I hope that gave you a little insight or a little something, and if not, I apologize. And to please Constance, I probably won't talk about Goetia for another few weeks or so. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.